everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Monday night, we are back. A little bit probably grumpier than normal, which takes a lot, but a lot to talk about, with especially looking ahead to see which direction we're going to go. I am your host, as always, Timuchin, here in Chicago, where we have some beautiful weather, but it's supposed to start raining and all that kind of crap again, but still can't complain. Spring is here. Bickler, where are you at?
It is beautiful out. It has been beautiful out today, although I would not know it because I'm stuck in the hamster wheel of corporate America staring at a computer screen.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like we just went for a walk right before like the podcast after we were done with work. Otherwise, yeah, I was like, it's bright out there, I think, is basically what I could do. Gally, what's happening? Another hamster in corporate America.
Yeah, weather's good. Weather's good. I too was tied to the desk today. You know, I'm lucky enough as an outside salesperson. I do get out quite a bit and can be out in the community and do stuff. So that's all right. But today was not one of those days. And I was working until 7:45 and I realized that, oh shit, we have this thing starting in 15 minutes. Oh my God, it's already 7:45.
Yes, good times are here. I mean, honestly, like after this morning, I was like, but did our best not to talk as much as possible about the Palace game this morning, sure, but I don't think we can get away with it 2 shows in a row. But one thing we can definitely not get away from is trivia, people. Today's is actually, just like any other day, pretty darn easy, pretty straightforward, because I figured I do want to talk about this when it comes to us keeping clean sheets. But you guys do the PL show for the channel, so I have faith in you guys nailing this. Top clean sheets in the league. There is one tied, and then the second and third are tied for goalies. Number 1 goalie with the top clean sheets, Gally. And then, like I say, 2 and 3 are tied at the same number.
Number 1, is it David Raya?
Yes, it is. He has 12 of them. Which, you know, I could kind of see that one, but second and third kind of really threw me a curveball. So it's going to be interesting to see what you guys come up with.
Is it the? I mean, they haven't gotten a lot of points, but is it the Flecken guy from Brentford?
Ooh, no, he's all the way down there. He only has 6, which is actually, I guess, not bad. I shouldn't say he's all the way down there. He's 9th with 6.
Go ahead, Bickler. I'll let you jump in before I just name every Premier League keeper, and then you get the 2
Yeah,
that
I don't really know. I mean, maybe Ederson, but he's missed time. I mean, that'd be my only thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like when I pulled it up, to be able to kind of talk about it here. About us and clean sheets and lack thereof kind of a thing. I went into this and I was like, well, that is really freaking weird. Ederson has 8. He is tied 4th. Well, I guess he's, 6th, 7th, whatever you want to call it.
Alan asked if it was crazy ass Martinez. Is it him?
Martinez is 4th with 8. So, I mean, this is a shocker to me, and I'm assuming it's going to be to you guys.
Leno. One of them. Leno for
Fulham has 9. Pickford for Everton has 9. They're tied for 2nd place. I actually find that shocking especially for Everton's case, team that's like struggling for them to keep. I guess that's a lot of like 0-0 draws in there. Yes, that was like the common guess right there. I mean, not a bad guess. Like I say, he does have 8 of them. Onana has 8.
I was going to say, I thought when you were doing it'll shock you, and you said Leno, I was going to guess, is it Onana, just because you wouldn't associate good defense with United this year and all the howlers, but they have had a lot of like 1-0. All their victories almost are like 1-0, 2-0 wins, United.
And shit, we gave him 2 or 1? 2. So there you go. There's 2. 2 of them are kind of like thanks to us. And this is like the weird part, actually. Allison has 7 of them, even though he has been out of action for months. So we're going to talk about, obviously, the weekend, and I do want to get to that. But before we even get to that, obviously we should probably touch on this. It kind of gives perspective. We did talk about it in the post match yesterday as well as this morning. Kind of puts everything in the grand scheme of things, and obviously as passionate and as kind of affected and into it as we get. Today is the 35th anniversary of the Hillsborough disaster. We were talking a little bit about it this morning. I don't know what you guys remember off of it, because obviously I don't know how closely you guys were following Liverpool at the time. Not to mention I was not here at the time, so I don't know how relevant or like the news, how the news came out here. But Gally, I guess let's start with you, like kind of like your thoughts on the deal and how you heard about it and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I'll be the first to admit I was 9 years old. I was just getting into,
really,
you know,
oh,
35,
never mind.
35 years ago. Yeah, I was
Sorry.
9. I was 9 years old. I was just really getting into professional sports here in America, and I hadn't yet ventured over to watching, European football. And at that time, it would have been like watching porn on grainy like TV because it wasn't ever on. I do though remember the story being talked about in like actual mainstream like sports news, because it was right when I started to like read the sports page, and like I don't think ESPN had just kind of taken off here in the Northeast. And I remember my dad talking about like kids dying at a football match and not understanding it. And then like, it's really what I learned about like hooligans. And then years later, when I really got into the club and started like reading books and trying to understand it, I was like sort of understood it. And then a few years back, I watched that documentary, maybe 15, 20 years ago, 15 years maybe. I watched the documentary on it, and it like really opened my eyes. And that's when I really like went in and kind of did my own homework, read about it, and really realized just how drastically disgusting the entire process was and the cover up. So it was really the cover up for me that made it a lot worse to me.
Oh yes, definitely. Victor, you were probably like 2 years old, 1 year old.
I wish I was 6. But yeah, it was similar path to Gally, where I started learning about this, when you start following it, probably like when I really started following late 2000s, it was the initial coverage of it. And that's where I started really learning more about it as you follow the club and what it means to the club. And like Gally said, it was really, I think, the shocking cover up of the entire thing and how it sort of like almost exiled an entire city and a country. That's where I really started to learn from it.
Yeah, see, since I'm an old asshole, so I was what? I was like 15. God damn, you guys are young. Kids. But no wonder you guys can't get the trivia right. But yeah, I mean, I remember like hearing about, obviously I was back home in Turkey at the time, and I kind of like, the news came across as more about like the initial news that I guess like came out here, where, and like you're saying, Gally, it was automatically, as a soccer fan in Turkey, it was like tied with like hooliganism and stuff like that. And when you heard the news and when it was like just a highlight, you kind of like got that as okay, like that's what happened. And I was like fairly new to Liverpool, and I was like kind of shocked because that's when I started following in '84, so I had like barely still getting news and being able to follow them and stuff like that. And then yes, until after I watched the documentary and stuff like that, you understand kind of. And that's why like if you're a newer fan to the club and you don't understand certain things in terms of the political thing, the national anthem, and all that kind of stuff, just go to YouTube. I mean, all those are on YouTube. There's like 2 really solid ones, one better than the other. But yeah, just like watch through those, and it kind of gives you an understanding of, if you think we're getting screwed by VAR and a couple of penalty calls and stuff like that, this goes 100 times worse and 1,000 times worse overall in terms of why this club doesn't trust a lot of things in England and stuff like that. But I figured that we do have to acknowledge it. We talked a little bit about it this morning as well, but obviously we know a lot more about it now. And sadly, it has never really been just at the end. Justice still has not been served, and the fight kind of still goes on. But all these.
Let me ask you though, what is justice now? I mean, they did admit finally that that they were wrong in it. Like, and I don't mean it like facetiously. Like, what would justice look like? Is it people going to jail? Is it like, I always wonder. I know why we keep talking about it, and we should never stop talking about it. But what would justice in 2024 look like? Is it an apology? Is it acknowledging that they just never should have done it? I mean, to me, it was, you know, organizational corruption at its finest.
Yes.
Between the police, the media, you know, I mean, it really was like, it was, I mean, I don't like to part any fun of it, but it's almost like it was a movie. Like you almost don't believe that they thought they were going to get away with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
it is like, you know, if you're
long.
watching the movie, you were like, okay, this is kind of like a little over the top, but they did. Yeah, exactly.
And I guess that's what I always meant. What is justice? And I asked that, you know, I think I shared this with you guys when Megan and I went to Liverpool. We went on a Soccer in the City tour, and Peter Carney gives the tour. And he was there. He's a survivor of Hillsborough. And when he gets to that point and he tells you this story, and like everyone, there isn't a dry eye in the entire bus. Like he tells you everything about being there and having friends not make it out, and like all the things, like all the emotions, all the feels. And I remember one of the people asked him that, and he's like, we always asked for justice. There was never any justice we could get. We just wanted people to acknowledge that they were wrong and that we did nothing wrong. And I just feel like I don't know what else could be done at this point.
I mean, I know like Dylan, for example, and I don't know as much of the details of this, to be honest with you. So if anybody in the audience or, you know, Dylan, like there still has not been any compensation to the families who were affected by it.
Perfect.
And I feel like, you know, one thing that has never been done, at least in my eyes, is, I don't know what you think, Bickler, but to me, it's always been like, been diminished. Like it's been an oopsie and not the huge conspiracy that it actually really is. It does not help, I guess, when the government in charge is pretty much still the same party and everything like that, for it to, I guess, come out. But where are you at with that, Bickler? I mean, see, so the bad thing is, you know, some of these people are just fucking old and dying. Whereas they should have been old and dying in prison a lot earlier. You shouldn't have taken this long in the first place to kind of cover it. And I know Sir Z was talking about it. You know, we talk a lot bad stuff about social media. But, you know, one thing that it has helped has made it a lot more difficult to cover up facts and shit if you really want to get the information now, like the final and stuff like that. In the past, what the blanket statement was, the loudest person won, and media, and if it's controlled by government, was the loudest voice. So everybody kind of went with that story. Whereas now, if you really listen, there's a lot of small noises that can actually kind of like blur out the other one. But Bickler, I'll pass it on to you.
I mean, I think the 2016 verdict went a long way, right, towards finding like the South Yorkshire police like accountable. I think that was the big one, right? That was the campaign for justice, really, and I think that went a long way. But I don't know that you can have justice when you're trying to seek to hold an entire legal system accountable. I don't know that you really can get justice, and I don't know you can really get justice when you go around the grounds of a league that still has chance, you know, about it, and, you know, making light or making fun or trying to get Liverpool supporters riled up. And I know they're in the minority, but they're still there and they're still prevalent, and it still happens every game week. And I think, you know, as long as that's there, until the entire football community as a whole quashes that, I don't know that there can ever feel like there is justice.
I guess that was why I asked the question, because I just feel like no matter what were to happen at this point, I feel like we have been so scorned, and the people that were dragged through it literally were dragged through the mud, and they keep getting dragged through it year after year. And we can have all the vigils and all the moments of silence, and they're moving. It feels to me like the time for justice probably passed. To Paul's point, it was 2016. It was a watershed moment, and it was huge, and it lasted, it felt like, for like a week. And literally the chants were back, and you know, I still have friends who are like, Liverpool supporters, cry, cry, cry. You'll never finish. You know, it never stops and it never goes away. So I just feel for the families. I feel for the people who went through it. You know, I know Sir Z mentioned he like was supposed to be at that match that day and something happened and he couldn't go. I can't imagine how many of those types of stories there are out there. Yeah. And I just feel like it's just sad and it's unfortunate. I don't think it'll ever feel like there's been real justice had. And unfortunately, I don't think you don't put something like that behind you no matter what. And you can't. And I think that the club does an amazing job of making sure that they are remembered and that we won't forget. I just was wondering what you guys would think that.
I think that's a fair question, really, because I think it is difficult. Like Jamie says, like, you know, he's like, I don't know if it's ever attainable. And I agree with that. You know, yeah, like Duckenfeld and Thatcher and all those people got away with it and sailed off, you know, like rode off into the sunset. And I think that's what, look, like, you know, like Dylan is saying, like the compensation and stuff, that's definitely not going to bring people back. But I think all those things adding up, the proper people going to jail and stuff like that. You know how they say closure? Like I watch a lot of crime TV because I'm trying to come up with the perfect murder. But I watch a lot of crime TV and, you know, like detectives and stuff always say, you know, when they solve a case, it doesn't bring that person back, but it can only help in terms of closure and stuff. And I think, you know, it's similar to that. It's not going to bring those people back, but I think it would feel better and it will be a bit easier for closure purposes if the right people were punished. But that's the one I was referring to, like what Sir Z is talking about in the Champions League final 20-30 years ago, before social media. That would be the story, right? It would be the Liverpool fans. It would be a very similar ordeal where the blame would go, the truth would never come out. I know I do talk a lot of shit about social media and stuff. It's, you know, that story came out, the truth came out, and they had to apologize, they had to compensate on all that kind of stuff. And that's, I guess, if you get one positive out of social media, and trust me, after the last couple of games we played, I find it very hard because social media is extremely painful to be on, to read some of the stuff that's written by fans and all that. I think that's one thing. But yeah, I mean, like you said, Gali, I think the best thing only thing on our end that we can do is make sure it's not freaking forgotten, is basically what it boils down to. And that's why, obviously, now that when we talk about games afterwards, it seems a lot more meaningless. But that's the part of social media that's been pissing me off lately. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, since we last got together, we've had 2 brutal games and 2 brutal results over here, 2 home losses. I mean, we were talking about how many home games Klopp had left, and 2 of them to end up like that is kind of disastrous. So, Bickler, I was talking about this morning. I want to ask you this because you're the resident. Well, I mean, Gally is the resident cherry picker forward, but you're the resident striker. So let me ask you this whole goal issues and not being able to score. I know as a defender, I was talking about it this morning, when shit is not going your way, right? Even if it's a simple pass you're going to do to your right back with the inside of your foot, you just don't trust it as much. You don't trust that curve, right? So you might take it a bit more right and do the curve that way. You might take one more step and everything takes an extra second. And in soccer, those extra seconds. Is that basically what we're facing? Like you can't dribble it in. Is it overthinking it? Just luck? What is it?
I mean, I think that's probably part of it. You know, I think you stop relying on muscle memory and you start overthinking things. And yeah, I think that's definitely decision making has definitely been affected. I think there is some elements of, just like physically not relying on your muscle memory and things like that for sure. I think, you know, when you look at the run of the season and we talked about we felt like this was starting to feel like the magic of the 2021 title where things just really started to we just really were getting the luck of the bounce, right? And it felt like we were getting 3 points where, you know, we shouldn't have gotten 3 points and we were finding a way to win when we weren't at our best and in really just getting massively fortunate in situations too. And, you know, we thought if we could ride that out, this could be the year if we could find that. And I think what we're seeing is we're really seeing that luck has two sides, and that pendulum is swung. And if you look at the run of play yesterday, and you're missing 1v1s, and Endo's knocking things off the crossbar from 3 feet away, and Nunez and Diaz and Mo all have shots, multiple shots that on any other day go in, if not for just crazy effort and blocks coming out of nowhere. And, obviously credit Pallets for the effort defensively. But I think, you're looking at a game where half a dozen of those probably go in, right? And yeah, we were carved open defensively as well. But I just think you got to look at some of those games and that's one of those games where you're just unlucky across the board and just didn't do enough to make it happen. But I think football is a funny game, man, because you don't always get it. Oftentimes you don't get the result that you've earned, right? And I think that we're seeing an extended run of that, and it probably feels like this team is running on fumes. And I think to some degree they definitely are, but I also think to some degree this team has just had bad bounces and bad luck consecutively as well.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it, right? I mean, it's all perspective at the end of the day. Like sometimes, you get those wins where you probably had no business winning, and we've had quite a few of those games. And if you win at the end of the day, it's referred to as, that's what champions do. You got to win when you don't play well and stuff like that. But if you do not, it basically comes out to be, Gally, the truth catches up with you. And then, everything comes out. I find it hard, we can talk about the lineup, and obviously with the injuries, it's kind of hard to judge certain things because we don't know how many minutes everybody was allowed to play, like Trent and Jota and stuff. But at the end of the day, whatever the system was, whatever the squad was, we created multiple chances. This in any other day is probably a 4-1, 5-1 game. Having said that, we said this for both United games. We've said this for a lot of games too. So why do you think the drought is there?
Well, I mean, I do think that the injuries have played a toll, and I think that you can only put things together with small size rotations. And I do think it kind of, we haven't had this, right, where all 5 strikers basically went off the boil at once. I mean, if you count Jota not being there for a bit with being injured, I was just looking back quickly scrolling through, right? Yeah, we scored 2 against United. We scored 3 in the FA Cup. If you take out the 5-1 and 6-1 wins in March against Prague, we really haven't played very good football and scored many goals going on 2+ months, going all the way back to the League Cup final that we win 1-0 in extra time against a bad Chelsea side at the time. We eke out a 1-0 win against Forest. We, play like dog shit against Sheffield United, and it takes a ball bouncing off Nunez's nuts and finding its way into the back of the net to get us on the board. And who knows how that match goes. And that game's 1-1, and then the Brighton match, not overly good showing at home. I mean, we haven't been playing teams that are pulling up trees, and we've struggled. So, I mean, the City match is the outlier because we played really, really well there, and then we laid an egg in the 3-1 loss to Arsenal. So this has been building, and I just feel like, to me, Thursday was more of the problem. Thursday was a bad performance. I thought yesterday, I'll take it a step further than Paul. I do think it is unlucky, but I think when you're a great, great team, you make your own luck, and I think they needed to find a way to make their luck yesterday, and they weren't able to. I do think the manager got it wrong from the start on a couple pieces, and I thought he got it wrong with some of his substitutions and the way in which he went about those substitutions. So, there were some bright spots in there. But again, we'll talk about Nunez's misses all day. I'll come right back to it. It was a poor play out of the back from Ali that leads to the first goal. It was poor defending again on 2 or 3 different players after Ali's mistake in distribution. And at 1-0, that match shouldn't be over. At the same time, you got to tip your hat. Like Paul said, they had great blocks. They were in all the right positions. They defended astutely. They created more chances. And to be totally honest with you, Henderson was outstanding. If Ali's making those saves like he does the save in the second half, that save he makes on Diaz in the first half at the back post is world class. And the save he makes in the second half on Mo is a great save as well. The Darwin save, we can all shit on Darwin on that corner. Like, that's got to go in. The ball falls right to him. He smashes it, and the keeper puts out an arm, and the keeper makes an amazing save. Like, again, you know, we can talk about Darwin. We can talk about Endo hitting the bar. We can talk about, I mean, the Jones miss is the one to me that's criminal. You're actually one-on-one. You can pass it in. The keeper goes down. That was the biggest one for me that I felt that was the moment to tie the game, and I genuinely believe we tie the game there. We win it with the Tanuchin special 3-1 going away. But once the Jones one missed, I almost feel like the whole side said, it's not our day. Because that's the guy you actually have confidence in finishing that one in that spot. I do, at least.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, it's not just Nunez. To me, like, we kind of had it's pretty bad when our discussion on Discord is which miss was more brutal is what we're talking about. Because, yeah, I was on, like what Dylan is saying, because he says, I get the point, Gally, but John had serious pressure on his back and the ball bobbles. I mean, he still should finish that. I mean, he has all the time in the world and he's going. But I feel like Nunez is, if you're a bit more calm, you know, you finish that. Because you just place it instead of trying to put Henderson in the goal as well. You just place it. You have the whole goal with Henderson in the middle. I mean, when you look at the distance he's at, that should have been a lot easier. I mean, Sergi says, what do you think about Klopp saying the United results hurt us? That goes back to, I think, Bickler in terms of not being able to score and that frustration. But kind of like what Gally was saying, it doesn't help when you let in all these early freaking goals and a team and players that are already struggling to score and worried about scoring now are saying, shit, now we got to score 2, not even 1.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you're creating an unnecessary sense of urgency on a team that already feels pressure, right? For a number of reasons, whether that's the title, whether it's Klopp's last year and wanting to do that. So yeah, I mean, the conceding early thing has been a consistent theme all year, right? I mean, all year we've been doing that. And I think, you know, eventually we were wondering if they were going to run out of gas and not be able to find the ability to sort of snatch these games back, right? So yeah, definitely. I mean, it doesn't set yourself up fine the rest of the game. I think my struggle is, and this is probably the difference between us and the City side, right? You see a City side that doesn't play well, and they essentially are okay to hold on to possession, recycle the ball, and they're patient, and then they find a goal in 60 minutes. And then the next thing you know, it's 5-1, right? When they've essentially been outplayed or not played well for 60 minutes. And so I think that's the big difference is, like, there's a maturity right now about a City side that's far from its best that Liverpool doesn't have. And I think what you're seeing is you're still, I think sometimes we forget that, like, you know, we've played, you know, almost the entire season, but at the end of the day, this is still a side that has a starting 11 where like 7 or 8 of these guys haven't played together for longer than the season, you know? And I still think we forget about that newness, fraudulent slip. But yeah, I think the judgment on
no one forgets about Nunez.
I do think the judgment on the Nunez strike on the corner is harsh because, like, I'll tell you as a striker, if that ball's falling down in that box, you're smashing it before anybody can get there. You're not worried. You don't have the time to place that. And I think, like, we watch it, we slow it down, and we see nobody near it, and we say, hey, place it. It's like, that's just not the reality when you have corner kicks coming in. So I think it's easy for us to sit on our couches and watch these things in slow-mo. But yeah, conceding early, it starts to your original point, Tim, it does start with conceding early. I think there's a maturity this side doesn't have yet, though.
Yeah, I mean, is that what it is then? Do you think, Gally? I mean, we started the season, and I know, like, everybody's like, when we started the season, you know, 1 trophy on top 4 would be, that's great. But as you go, the goals change, and it's okay to be frustrated and disappointed when you don't reach your new goals. I mean, you know, if you have end of year numbers, just because when you have like a kick-ass Q1 and Q2, when you end up with your regular projections, you don't say like, well, this is what we want in the beginning of the year anyway. More than likely, your Q3 and Q4 sucked compared to what you expected to be, and it's shitty, and it's okay to be not happy with those last 2 quarters. Is it just that this team is not mentally ready to cope with it? You know, look, we say mentality monsters and stuff like that. At the same time, you got to kind of call it when this happens, and maybe you're not this current version, the 2.0, if you will, is not really mentality monsters. Just late comebacks doesn't always mean mentality monsters. Could be just basically putting in the efforts till the very last whistle.
Yeah, I honestly always believe the mentality monsters wasn't about never being out of a game. It was always being in control of a match. And I don't feel like we've ever been in control of a match at any point this season. There were parts at the beginning of the year. I mean, think about the Newcastle match. Think about the late win for Forest, the Luton match where we get the draw late. Like, there's so many opportunities where if we were being really critical of this side, we would have called out, like, this feels a little bit like fool's gold. I don't know how long this can consistently occur. And I think we got convinced into it because it kept happening even after we had Mo go off to AFCON, even after we were down to kids playing. You know, I mean, we have Kwanzaa and Bradley and McConnell playing meaningful minutes in January of a league title campaign. And I think the fact that we're now, you know, we're still right there in it, but we're on the outside looking in. I think, you know, the European competition playing on Thursdays and Sundays has not helped this side with the turnaround and the different injuries that they had. And as much as the manager is rotating, I'm not 100% sure that he's utilizing his squad to the best of his capabilities. And I know he doesn't like to rotate as it is, so we should be excited that he's rotating more than he ever has before. But I still feel like he's been stuck to some players for a little too long. You know, the other thing is I think we underestimated how big of an injury Matip was going down, because Konate has absolutely regressed this season. And as good as Kwanzaa's been, it was way too much, in my opinion, to ask an 18-year-old to try to anchor a back line that plays a high line like we do and cover for Trent and another teenager playing alongside of him, or, you know, Joe Gomez, who's doing a nice job but really isn't a fullback. So I feel like I think the wheels started to come off here a little bit, but I think if we were being really, really realistic, then we realized that those goals at the beginning of the season of like a trophy and making sure we were in the top 4 were real. And then I think when Klopp announced he was leaving, that also added additional pressure. And I don't think it's helped these guys, to be honest, having to answer questions every week and having them all have to say every week's a final. We want to send out the manager on a high. I think that added more pressure, to your point, to a team that didn't even know each other yet or how to go about this. I think they need it to be the plucky engine like Arsenal were last year. And I think we made them, as supporters, made them into something they're not. And that's probably not fair on them.
I think so too. I mean, like, you know, Jamie says we've been in third gear all season. I think earlier in the year, and maybe, you know, as fans, I mean, this includes all of us, you know, when we were watching, we're like, you know, you almost project, right? We were watching it. We're like, this brand new Liverpool 2.0 is playing like this now. Just imagine when they get used to each other. And we kind of like so in 3 months, we should be winning everything 5-0, then kind of an attitude to it. And yeah, I think we're just kind of like back to reality. Not to say that reality is brutal, but it's not as maybe rosy as it was. I do want to ask you guys this, and obviously it is kind of like really dependent on who comes and stuff like that. This is probably more about where you guys are at with it. And I know that's probably a discussion that we can have separately altogether, that why Nunez gets probably more focus on blame than the other misses. Like, can you earn credit, whatever? Well, I mean, that's kind of like another discussion. But Dylan says on Instagram, honest question for all three of you is, do you think the new manager will trust Darwin? No, hey, just too many big chances over 2 seasons haven't been finished. I think, let's start with you, Bickler. I mean, I think we don't know. We kind of know, but we don't really officially know who the new manager is going to be, what the system is going to be. So that's kind of hard to judge. But I guess maybe we can turn around and say, do you trust Darwin in a different system, for example? Or are you like, man, this might never happen?
I think trust is the wrong word. I think because Yeah, I mean, I trust Darwin can score. I've seen it. We've played against it and watched it happen, right? And like we've seen him contribute. I trust him. I think that Darwin, we talked about how raw he is, and I still think he's very much a work in progress. Okay. And I think we get hung up on the fact that like he's not necessarily young anymore, right? At 24, but I think he is young in terms of footballing years. Like, I think like when you look at how he came up versus Cody Gakpo, and we've talked about this before, it's a very, very unconventional, rough, raw route through the second divisions, over through, South America, up through the divisions in Portugal. I think he has got a lot more work to do developmentally, obviously, than somebody like Gakpo, who comes up as sort of a prodigy in a well-established youth system. I think it's just a very different path. I will tell you this. If you look at that starting lineup that went out, Mo, Nunez, Darwin, I think it's a very real possibility that two of those players won't be with us going into the next year. And the two players that won't be with us are players other than Darwin.
Right.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, despite his age, I understand what you're saying, Bickler, in terms of, soccer years and stuff like that. Gally, have you seen enough to say a different manager? And it's not to say it's Klopp's fault. And, like Jamie says, you can't, it's not like the new guy is going to come in and he's going to say, you have 2 misses left and then you're gone. But at the same time, you kind of come in based on the body of work and say, I can do this with this guy, do this with that guy. And I guarantee you, when a new manager is being approached and talked to, these are conversations that are probably being had in terms of, plans for the future and how you would use and who you would want to keep and who you would build around and stuff like that. Have you seen enough to say, yes, we can make a different manager in a different system can make him work as a number 9?
Well, I absolutely think that that's what's going to happen, because I think every manager believes that they can take other managers' problems and turn them into talent. And I also think that Michael Edwards is not going to sell a player off of a mediocre season that everyone has called him shite, because he's not going to get anything for him. So the new manager is going to say, I'm going to make Darwin work, because he's going to be told you're going to make Darwin work. Do I think the new manager will have some say and have some players probably exit the club, that some that might even shock us? I do. Assuming it's Amorim, right? Assuming that he is the next manager. He has been a manager in the Portuguese league for a couple years. He's seen Darwin. He's competed against Benfica at their highest. He's the sporting manager. I think he knows what Darwin can and can't do, and probably the type of player he is. I don't know that Darwin Nunez ever slotted right into a 4-3-3. Paul's been saying it since day one when he got here. We've questioned whether he's better from the left. I think he's better playing in a different style of football and formation than what Jurgen Klopp plays. And I think it's a testament and a credit to him that he was able to force his way to be one of the first names on the team sheet at a Jurgen Klopp team, because Klopp buried him at the end of last season. Like, buried him. He was the 5th attacker.
Yeah.
I feel bad because it was almost like it got the roles reversed with Gakpo this season compared to last.
Yeah.
I do want to raise my hand as someone who's been very critical of Cody Gakpo. For me, yesterday, what I saw when Gakpo came in is exactly the player this club needs. And it's why Gakpo, in my opinion, should be the number 1 option on the left. The entire attack looked better as soon as Gakpo came into the game, because players, he slows down on the ball. He takes on players. He comes inside. He goes outside. He uses his football IQ to create things where Diaz, to your point, Timuchin, he has no idea what he wants to do himself. He's just playing street football. He's just going clicks and flicks and tricks that never come off. He just dribbles down cul-de-sacs and runs into defenders. To me, I need to see over these next 6-7 matches, and I don't know that we will, because Klopp doesn't do this. I'd really like to see what Gakpo and Nunez look like playing together, because I don't think we've ever got an extended run of those two playing together. And maybe that's kind of what Nunez needs. And, everyone was hot for Nunez earlier in the season when Mo was passing him the ball constantly and he was scoring goals. And then Mo stopped passing everybody the ball because he stopped scoring goals himself. And honestly, to me, it all comes back to Mo not being himself since AFCON. And it's not just the injury. He's back now. Like, he's been back for a few weeks. He doesn't look himself. He doesn't have the joy. I can't remember the last time he beat a player. I can't remember the last time I saw him take a shot I actually thought was going in. I know he hit the post the other day, but, you know, they're tame efforts. Every time he should take a touch, he takes it first time. Every time he should take it first time, he takes a touch. Yeah. And, you know, when a guy is all pace and needs 8 chances to score 3 goals, but it's all comes from pace and power, well, eventually Father Time catches up with everybody. And I do feel like we are starting to see a slight decline in the things that made Mo so special. So for all the supporters out there who think he's going to get an extension this summer and a pay raise, I don't know that that's going to happen. And I think Mo is the big conundrum to me. We all focus on Darwin, but to me, this attack is supposed to run through Mo. And when he's not on, we don't score, and we haven't for 2+ seasons, honestly, since Sadio left.
I think that's the thing. If almost like Mo forces, when he does pass the ball, I almost feel like he forces it to Nunez a bit too much. Like this, Nunez runs onto it thing, and it's like, okay, like not to every damn ball, kind of an ordeal. And then the other ones, exactly what you're saying. Like sometimes when you expect him to take a touch, he doesn't. Sometimes, he has time and he rushes it. But I think that you can say that for everybody up front. But what I would like to see, and I think, Brian says he's become passive for a long time though, and has been the creator off of wide. And I think it does hurt him not having Trent causing more havoc in the middle as well. Like the space that Mo creates, there's really has not been anybody to run into when we do that. So I think that will help the cause down the road. But for Nunez, I think, maybe a new manager, but we've kind of like talked about it all season, right? He's like, he's so much chaos. I feel like that whole front line is nothing but chaos now, and chaos is good here and there, but not all the freaking time. So you have Diaz creating his own chaos in his own world. You have Nunez, he's Mr. Chaos. And then Mo is, like I say, out wide, trying to create, see what they're doing in the middle, trying to see them. It's like, where's Waldo in that chaos? And I think that's why if you have a more structured left wing like Gakpo was playing, and you can kind of restrict Nunez's chaos. Like you say, I think everybody was so high on he's so chaotic over there. Well, that's great, but when it's not producing anything apart from when he's scoring with his nuts, it doesn't really do much attacking wise. And I think that's like the biggest issue over there. So I think, and like you're saying, Gally, we almost have to, due to the investment made, kind of roll with that and have to make it work. And I think it's doable because we have seen him score and we have seen him take smart shots. It doesn't help when everybody's in a drought as well. It's not only one player. I mean, heck, last Monday we talked about if Jota plays that United game, he has a hat trick, and then Jota comes in and misses. It's like, I guess when Jota missed, I was like, I guess it's just not freaking meant to be, is what I said. I just basically like, we're done. Like there's no way out, kind of a deal. But let's look at it to Thursday. Bickler. I mean, obviously, like I say, we were on last Monday for this pod, so we haven't talked since. Have your thoughts about what to do this coming Thursday changed since that game ended on Thursday, since the Crystal Palace game ended, and then when the Arsenal game ended? Or have you had the same thought throughout, or we like, we should go, no, you know what, maybe, kind of a thing? Where are you at?
No, it hasn't really. It really hasn't changed, because I don't think that this team is healthy enough to be able to even say, hey, we're going to throw this one and concentrate on this one. Do you know what I mean? I think I think you're almost locked into like having to give every game your best effort and then pick and choose where you want to rotate in the side because you have to. I think that so I don't think it's changed at all. And look, I know we can kind of all make jokes that City just don't lose on the second half of the year, and that may be true. But at the end of the day, no matter what happened, so let's say Arsenal had won in the weekend, right? There's still 6 games left, right? Like, I mean, I don't like this isn't a side that I would want to see or expect to see pack it up and say, hey, like, you know, it's done, we lost it, etc. So there's still plenty that can happen. I still think either way, you've got to go for it in both these upcoming matches, and you take them a game at a time. You know, like I don't know if there's any other answer, and I don't know that Klopp really knows how to set up any other way. Evidenced by the fact that, you know, we've had dead rubbers across Europe and lost starters to injury in them. So, so yeah, that's where we're at.
Parto says Nunez, as wonderful as he can be, seems to lack consistent decision making and composure, as others have stated. Is that coachable? I think it's containable. Is, I guess, my take at that. I think it's doable if you have a structure, and I almost feel like we've tried to feed off of the chaos he creates so much that we've been so happy with the chaos, we haven't tried to kind of control the powers that Nunez has. Kind of an ordeal. Going back to the game, Gally, the issue that we probably face is the people that you might normally want to rest actually needs minutes, like a Jota, like a Trent, like a Gakpo. So we probably are better served, I think, at least going full force, see what happens. By halftime, if you don't think it's happening, that's when you can do your subs and maybe rest or whatever, thinking of the weekend. But how do you approach Thursday? And has it changed, similar to what I was asking Beckler?
Yeah, it hasn't changed for me. I think he was going to go for it no matter what. Listen, if this is 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and road goals still matter in European ties, and you're down 3-0, and they have 3 goals on the road, and you know you have to win by 4, like we knew we had to do. You know, I think that's a bigger deal to me. That could have been a bigger, like a watershed. I think Liverpool can go into this match, even though they don't play well in Italy, and Klopp's kryptonite seems to be like Italian cuisine or the passport stamp and the customs in Italy. I mean, you look at his losses, the record against Italy, Italian team since Klopp's been here is huge.
Hates a bowl of pasta, yes.
Clearly hates it. Either that or they don't have the right cigarettes for him or something. But I genuinely, we can make up 3 goals. You could win this match 4-1. You could, especially if you were to score early. I do know that the side has some talent, but I really think you have to go for it because it's a winnable competition if you can get past this tie. Like you get Marseille in the next round, most likely, right? I think they won their first leg against Benfica, I think it was. So I think you have to go for it if you can. And I don't think Klopp knows any other way. So I think he goes strong here. I think he'll rotate a few players. I think Gakpo probably deserves a start and should start. I think Nunez could use a break and maybe come off the bench and see if maybe you can energize him being a sub and maybe give Jota some minutes, maybe 45. And I think Trent needs to start. I mean, I love Bradley, but I felt bad because we have Maka in the pre-match basically calling Bradley a better fullback than Trent Alexander-Arnold right now, and then he went out and gave maybe the worst 45 minutes he's had all that he's played yet in that first half against Palace. And he just looks, to Paul's point in Discord, we had the same, he just looks absolutely knackered. The kid's played way too many minutes at way too young an age. But again, this comes back to the manager, playing Gomez at left back instead of playing him at right back and playing Tsimikas when Robertson was out. Like, if you don't, Tsimikas didn't even make the bench on the weekend. Like, if you don't feel your squad is good enough to make it, then you're gonna kill your squad. And we've watched 9 years of this, so like this isn't new.
Yeah, to be fair, we did see Costas, and then I was more like, this is why Gomez is playing left back.
Good point.
But yeah, I know what you mean, and I think like Bradley was great coming onto the scene, but I think the games is catching up. Like the kid in him is, you can see he's being slowly torn down. Dylan says we did beat Atalanta 5-0, and actually on paper that was the better Atalanta team because that was like Champions League and stuff as well. But I think that was COVID, right? Because they did not have fans either. Am I remembering this right?
I believe it was.
My thing is they did play today, by the way. Atalanta played today, so they will have 1 day less games. Bickler, I guess one of the things I think Brian was talking about in the comments that we did have the spaces. One thing with Atlanta is they seem to know only one way to play, so they're not going to just sit back. Does that almost like play into our hands, or do they try to do something they don't normally do, which can also hurt a team when it's not something you normally do?
I think that if you only know one way to play, it probably benefits you in a situation like this, to be quite honest. Which sounds familiar, right? I mean, that's us too, right? Like, so.
But the fact that it's going to be a team that's going to come out, it's not going to park the bus because that's not how they play. Does that help us when we have to get a lot of goals?
I mean, it helps us if we're not conceding first. You know?
Well, that's true.
Like, so,
I know what you're talking about.
Would you play Allison or would you play Kelleher?
Oh, I play Allison. Yeah, I would.
I think it's going to be Kelleher, but I would play Allison as well.
Yeah,
if it was.
Yeah, I would play Allison. I think if Klopp really wants to show the side that he's trying to win the match, he plays Allison. Because I do think, like in Kelleher's case, he's been great and he was amazing. And I know Ali had a mistake at the weekend, but I said it on the pre-match show. I felt like we pushed that envelope maybe just one match too far in that Atlanta match. Like he just had too many. He had played so well. But, I mean, 2 of those 3 goals against Atalanta should never go in the back of the net. They're soft goals that Allison doesn't concede. So, to me, if you're going to Atlanta right now, if you're going to Atlanta, oh, it's probably hot. If you're going to Atalanta.
I hear they have a great aquarium, but go ahead.
Yeah, they do have a great aquarium.
I wonder which city's got better traffic.
Oh, guarantee.
It's got to be Atlanta. It's
got to be Atlanta.
It's got as bad as that is. That's how bad Atlanta traffic is.
It is pretty bad. I would definitely. I just think that if you're going there down 1-0, you probably think you're the favorite. You probably feel good about yourself if you're Liverpool going there, even down 1-0. 3-0 is a big hurdle to climb, but I think the boys would be up for it. I just think they're going to have to score early, and I think scoring early is something we've struggled with for a while now. All we keep saying is just get us a first goal. Get us a goal in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And all we do is concede one every single match.
So who do you play, Bickler? Give me a starting 11 for this game. Because I think we're all on the same page here. We're going for it. And, the people we need are going to be there. The only sad thing, I mean, the concerning part of that is, I guess, you might run Mac and Endo into the ground that way. But, shit, there's 6-7 games left. I don't know if there's time to rest and rotate. Suck it up, Buttercup.
I think the controversial one for me is that I'm probably starting Kwanzaa next to Van Dijk in this one. I'd go Kwanzaa, Van Dijk, Trent, Robbo, Allison. God, Endo's looking so tired, but that, I think the midfield is where this one gets tough. I'd probably still.
By the way, you said tired. Well, let me ask you. I didn't want to interrupt your lineup, but let me ask you right back. Do you think that's being because it looks a lot more? It's starting to look more about the Endo of the earlier. Is it because some teams have figured him out? They know when to pressure him, and he's losing down balls, or is it like you're saying, just basically being tired for a dude who's definitely not used to the pace, number of games, and the pace of games to add to it?
I mean, I'll probably just go with the fact that he's 31 and played every minute of the last 2.5 months.
Okay, that's fair.
I think we've seen. I could maybe buy that if we had seen such an extended run of pretty good to dominant performances from him. I'd probably still go Endo Mac here, and you can make an argument for starting Mac in the 6 in this match and putting Szoboszlai right. I just don't think that I've seen anything from Szoboszlai that makes me think that he's going to come out and contribute in the way that we need him to contribute right out of the gate. So I'd probably go Mac. I'd probably go on the right there. And then on the left, man, I probably put Jones right back out there, man.
Oh, okay.
I think and I'll say the same thing with Kwanzaa. I'm not a big fan of sitting young players after they make big mistakes the following match. I know that Jones has kind of looked off of it for a little bit. I still probably put him out here. And then your front three, I think I think I probably start the same front three. I probably start Mo, Darwin, and Diaz, and then I'm looking. Well, I don't know. Maybe I go Gakpo, and then I've got Diaz and Jota off the bench, or Nunez and Jota off the bench. You've got those two, because I mean those are your most impactful subs that you could potentially make in this tie. So maybe we're doing that. I think that there is an argument to be made here that you put Harvey Elliott in the starting lineup somewhere, although we have seen that like he has been the most impactful sub off the bench, not named Jota. So I still think, being in a position where you've got Harvey, Jota, and Nunez to come off the bench is probably the spot you want to be in there.
Shelton has Konate instead on D, Ando, Mecca, Elliott, Gakpo, Jota, Mo. I like the Gakpo, Jota, Mo. That's what Dylan is going with as well. Konate again. He's putting Jones instead of Elliott. What are you changing from Bickler's 11 galley?
Oof. I mean, I agree with playing Jones, getting him back out there, but it has been, I mean, it was a poor substitute performance. It was a poor start from him on the weekend. And
he played like 80, 82 minutes too on top of it.
Yeah, I don't know that Jones gets the nod here. There's part of me that just makes me think he's going to start Gravenberch in this game because he feels like he needs some minutes and he needs to try to get him going. And we know he loves the player. I do think Kwanzaa will get restored to the side, and I think the back five is as Paul said it. I think I'd go Maka, Szoboszlai, and Gravenberch, even though I don't love that midfield by any means. I'm with Paul here. Like, I don't understand how Szoboszlai, and this is maybe why I defend Nunez so vociferously. Like, I don't know where I just pulled that freaking word out from at this time of night.
That was a good one, man.
That was a good one. I might have to use a thesaurus. I couldn't spell it, to be totally honest with you.
I was going to have you spell it. Yeah, exactly.
No. You want to see
Kelly's in real trouble if you guys are playing Scrabble later. I'll tell you.
Yeah, real trouble. Well, except for
Kelly's holding the cards in the back for him to read, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, she's probably it's right behind the light. No, I don't understand how Szoboszlai has skated any criticism and has avoided all the criticism this season. I mean, he was a $70 million purchase who's supposed to bring all this attacking flair. He has 3 goals and 2 assists. And I can't tell you the last time I saw him put in a good performance. I mean, we boasted because he gave effort in a half and played some defense. We're like, oh man, that's the best half we've seen out of Szoboszlai in forever. And it's like, and I understand there's talent in there, and maybe again another guy who needs a different formation and maybe a new breath, but just doesn't feel like a Jurgen Klopp player to me, and just felt like a buy that they knew they could make, so they deposited the money and they activated the release clause, like activate release clause, and then they were like, wait, what the fuck do we do now? And I just don't think it's worked. And I'll be honest, you want to talk about a guy who's got to have a big second season, in my opinion. There are midfielders at the club that are fighting really hard to take his job. And I'd argue right now, we said Jones was ahead of him all season long. I don't think there's a question that Harvey Elliott offers more to this side in the midfield than Szoboszlai does. And the new manager, he's not going to have these loyalties to any player other than the price tags, right? And I just really think that these are big 6-7 matches for him. I really think it's really, really important that he lays a marker down. And maybe I'm totally out of it and he gets moved to a right attacking position in a diamond, or he starts playing more in his natural positions. But to me, this is a big match for Szoboszlai, a big month and a half for him, because I just feel like he's gotten away with it. I genuinely feel like he's gotten away with it more than anyone in this entire side this season.
Probably because I think everybody fell in love with him too early and too much in some ways as well.
The new Gerrard.
Yes, right. And then that's why when I started picking Mac, I was like, no, let's not do the same thing with Mac. But honestly, my thing is, I think Elliott sometimes looks a lot more in place, and partially that is due to the familiarity, and he's understanding where the ball should go, what he should do, when to do what. And you have Szoboszlai And that's what scares me about that midfield, even though I agree with it, because I think it's worth rolling the dice with Mac Gravenberg and stuff, because it's going to be a midfield, and you throw Gakpo in there, it's going to be a bunch of people trying too hard to make something happen. And I think that's why the next season is so hard to predict, man, because I don't think that's a great position, for example, with Szoboszlai. Brian says curse of the 8, but at least, you know, it's not the Keita drama that's Werder Bremen is getting right now. So there's also that. Like good stuff over there. Yes, good old time. We should have talked about it. Maybe on the next breakfast show, we'll really dig into some Keita gossip. On the way out, score predictions. Bickler, let's start with you. What are you putting our percentage chance in advancing to the semis? Give me a score.
Like 15%. I just think, you know, obviously that's a huge, I feel like 15% is probably high, but that it's just a huge goal tally to overcome on a side that's having trouble scoring right now.
What was the final score you gave, by the way?
I didn't
give a final score.
Nope, I didn't. I
like the percentage, but
I'll say 2-1.
2-1 good guys?
2-1 good guys.
Galley.
I'd put it, I'd probably be a little bit more pessimistic. I'm going to say 10%. 10% we move forward, and I think that it's a heartbreaker. I think we win the match, and it's like 3-1, and we're scrambling like madmen and women at the end of the match trying to get that 4th goal we need to force extra time, and it's just too little too late.
Damn, man, I hate to add to the pessimism, but I'm actually even probably most pessimistic. I was at 10%, but Matush has, with his advanced math this morning, convinced me for the 12.5. So we'll go with the 12.5. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I'm actually going with like a 2-2 or something like that, because I think sometime in the second half we decide, yeah, it's not happening. And that's when we make the substitutions. But 12.5%. You never know. There's definitely a chance. This team, Liverpool, does not do things easy. I think we know this and I think I would have a lot more. I would have said probably 15-20 if we were home. The fact that we're going away. Dylan says we're going through, lads. Believe. Well, 12.5%. That's the best I can do.
I was going to say, we got 10, 12.5, and 15. We're pretty much 2.5%. So, Dylan, we'll roll you in at 17.5%. Thanks, my friend.
But yeah, let's hope for the best. You never know. There's always hope until the final whistle. So we'll see that then. We'll talk a lot about it, obviously, Wednesday morning on the breakfast show. So do tune in then. There's a bunch of stuff going on the Patreon content. If you have not subscribed already, do subscribe there as well. There's a bunch of stuff going up tomorrow and Wednesday over there as well. Give us a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit all those buttons down there, except the one that shows thumbs down. Everything else should be good to go. And we will see you guys next week as a trio over here. Have an excellent week. We'll be talking about our semifinal matchup next week. You guys have an excellent week. Take care.